What happens if you fail? What do people think of you? What happens if your worst nightmare comes true? The evil thought that's keeping you up at night of if I fail, what happens if that actually happens? And the worst case scenario plays out. Back in 2019, I attended a top business university, and as many of you know, I hated it. I hated the classes, I hated the people, I hated the teachers, I even hated the damn smell of the place. But I was safe. If I simply stuck it out for a few years, I'd be chilling, making 6 figs at some corporate consulting job. But as you can probably tell, I said, fuck that. Now I'm sitting here on YouTube trying to make ends meet. A lot of people were against me quitting school and had doubts in my ability to support myself, but I went all in on my local marketing agency with the mindset of I cannot fail. I couldn't fail because I needed to prove these people wrong. I was scared that if I failed, they would think badly of me. And so I didn't. And instead of charging what I was worth, I worked for cheap just to make sure I didn't fail. I bent over backwards for people just to make sure I didn't fail, and I got fucked. After 18 months of this, I failed. The stress of working with 200 plus cheap clients bared too much. And I shut down my local lead gen agency to start a lead gen agency. And kind of like you right now, no one cared. With that in mind, I went big on my second agency and I bumped my price from $300 to $5,000 because now I wasn't afraid of failing. I didn't care what people thought, and I made 22 grand in my first 4 weeks. Now, here are 3 mindset shifts that will eradicate your fear of failure so you can make a fuck ton of money. But a quick reminder, I'm a guru who only posts content on YouTube so I can steal all your money and drive a Lamborghini, and I do this by investing in successful SMMAs to make the majority of my income. Therefore, I want to make you successful too, boss. If you want to be successful, join the First Client Challenge where you will get your first client in the next 30 days, and I personally guarantee that, and it's also free, so there's no risk to you. Or you can apply to join the RSC Inner Circle, which is not free, but that is my elite network of successful SMA owners. So if you feel like I just described you can apply to see if you are a fit in that. But warning, you're probably not. So, first thing you must understand is that all fears lead back to death. Okay? We fear that if we lose this client, we will then lose another client, we will then lose another client, now we won't be able to afford our bills, now we won't be able to put a roof over our head, now we won't be able to eat, now we'll be homeless, and now we're going to die in the freezing cold winter on a cold winter night. But when you say it like that, it seems irrational. It seems like I have lost my marbles. But that is why we fear. We fear that if this happens, eventually it'll lead to our death. Right? It is a natural human instinct to fear death. Because if we didn't fear death, well, we would do stupid shit and we would die all the time, right? Everybody would be dying all over the place if we didn't fear death. We'd be jumping in front of train tracks because it's funny, right? We'd be speeding at like ridiculous speeds on the road because it's funny, right? The reason why we don't do all those things is because we fear death, right? And because all fears lead back to death, we have to look at this from a logical perspective. When we look at this from this point of view, we can look at our fears and say, okay, we're feared that if this happens, and this happens, and this happens, and this happens, and this happens, right? And maybe you want to write that down on a piece of paper. And once you write it down on a piece of paper, you can hold that piece of paper up and you can look at it and be like, damn, that makes no sense at all. That's illogical. That is me letting my emotions control me, right? And that is step 1 to understanding that these fears that you have are completely made up and in your head, okay? So, question. Do you think you could walk along this ledge? I'd hope so. Honestly, I would really hope so. Do you think you can walk along this ledge? I wouldn't try it. Maybe you could if you're maybe like 1 or 2 of the people watching this video, they might be able to do it. So what's the difference, right? The ledge on the right is actually an easier ledge to walk across. It's thicker, you know. The ledge on the left is very skinny, but I'm sure that none of you guys would have a problem on it. That being said, if you hopped onto the ledge on the right, the bigger, more thicker one, you'd be trembling, you'd be losing your balance, and you'd probably fall. But most of you guys would have no problem with the ledge on the left, and the only difference is your perception of fear, your perception of risk, right? The reason why you have absolutely no problem walking along the ledge on the left is because you have no fear. You have no perception of risk. The reason why you would struggle to walk along the one on the right is because your perception of fear. You believe that you are in great danger, and when you believe that you are in great danger, you're not going to perform at the level that you normally can, okay? And so that is why, in conjunction with the first thing I just talked about, which is that all fears lead back to death, if you look at it from the logical perspective of all fears lead back to death, right? And so at what point does this become irrational, right? You can mitigate these perceived fears so you can have the performance of somebody walking along this skinny yellow line as opposed to the performance of somebody walking along this side of the building, right? A lot of you guys are running your agencies as if you're walking along the side of the building, when really you're walking along the ledge. Okay, it's all up here. And this is how you can understand that and write this down so you can look at this from a logical perspective to alleviate these fears so you can increase your own potential and performance, okay? A lot of times when we fear failure and fear the thoughts of others, it's because we fear as though if we do X, this person will think poorly of me. And a lot of the time it's, maybe a service level, oh, people will think badly of me. But really, if you actually have an honest conversation with yourself, 9 times out of 10, you're going to trace yourself back to one individual. Maybe it's your Uncle Jerry. Maybe it's your sister Sally. Maybe it's your dad. Maybe it's your mom. Maybe it's your dog. It doesn't matter who it is. But when you trace and you have that honest conversation with yourself and you make it all the way back to one individual, you can look at this and ask yourself, are you really going to let that individual have all the power over your life? Are you really going to let that individual be the reason that you go and do what you want with your life, or you don't go and do what you want with your life? Are you really going to let that individual be the reason that you live a scared, fearful life where you don't accomplish what you want to accomplish and you wake up as a 78-year-old with nothing but regret of the actions that you didn't take? More on that in a minute, right? No, you're not, right? And when you understand the fact that you cannot let your Uncle Jerry, your sister Sally, or your dog have that amount of power over you, you can break free, right? And maybe you'll upset them, but that's okay. Because I promise you, the pain of upsetting them today is going to be much less than the pain that comes from the regret and the resentment that you hold towards them for the rest of your life. So if you actually have any genuine compassion towards that relationship and you don't want to find yourself in a position where you hate them and you resent them for the rest of your life, it is better that you do the right thing for yourself today. And you need to understand that. And here's the last thing, is what happens if you never try? We can all think back to things that we didn't do 2 years ago, last month, 3 years ago. And we can think to ourselves, damn, I wish I wasn't so scared. I wish I just went and tried it. Like, really, nothing, it wouldn't be that bad, right? But the cost of pain today is always going to be significantly less than the bill of regret later. You may have heard that quote before. But it is very, very true. I think it's 96% of people on their deathbed do not regret the things that they did do. They regret the things that they didn't do. Nobody is sitting there on their deathbed thinking, man, I really regret chasing my dreams and trying to start that online business that I wanted to start. No. They think to themselves, damn, I really wish I'd actually tried that business because maybe my life would have been a lot better. Maybe I would have been a lot more happy. Maybe I would have had a lot more money. But instead, I just chose to play it safe. I just chose to do what everybody else wants to do, right? I chose to let others control their life over me. I chose to, avoid pain, avoid discomfort, right? And ultimately, it's led me down a path that I'm not proud of, right? That is what happens if you never try. And if you don't do it for yourself, if you don't do it for anybody else, if you have nobody to do it for your future self. Okay? The last thing I want to leave this off with is please don't subscribe because you'll regret it.